You have been told your whole life that being a good person is the key to success. But what if that is a lie? What if your commitment to being good is the thing holding you back, making you predictable, and causing you to lose at the game of life? Over 500 years ago, a Florentine diplomat named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote a book so scandalous, so brutally honest about power, that his name became synonymous with evil itself. But here is the twist. Machiavelli understood something that most people are still afraid to admit. In a world that does not play by the rules, traditional morality can be a fatal weakness. In this video, we will uncover why good people so often fail and how you can turn this uncomfortable truth into real respect and freedom. This is not about becoming evil. It is about becoming effective. What you are about to hear is not theory. These are the lessons Machiavelli pulled from betrayal, from power, from watching empires rise and collapse. They are the patterns that explain why you have been overlooked, and the principles that can finally set you free. Before we can find a solution, we have to understand just how deep the problem goes. Why do so many intelligent people still believe goodness alone will carry them? The belief that being good is enough for success is not just a casual opinion. It is one of the most deeply embedded pieces of our cultural programming. It is like a form of societal hypnosis, and it starts the moment we are born. Think about the stories we are told as kids. The hero is always virtuous. The villain is always wicked. And in the end, the hero wins not because they were smarter or more strategic, but because they were more good. Goodness is presented as a cosmic guarantee, a built-in insurance policy. The honest character triumphs, the liar is exposed, and the kind are rewarded. These stories are designed to instill a moral compass, and they teach cooperation and trust, the essential lubricants for a functioning society. But they are a lie, or, to be more precise, a dangerous oversimplification. They prepare you for a world that simply does not exist. And if you step into that world blind, you are the one who gets broken. As we grow up, this programming gets reinforced. Our schools reward rule following and compliance. We are taught to wait our turn, raise our hands, and share credit. Religious and spiritual traditions praise humility, sacrifice, and forgiveness. The entire self-help industry is practically built on this premise, selling you affirmations and gratitude journals, with the implicit promise that your inner goodness will magically create outer success. And yet, ask yourself, has it? Has it really protected you when it mattered most? The modern workplace has perfected this deception. You are welcomed into a corporate culture that loves to talk about values. Mission statements about integrity and teamwork are plastered on the walls. You are told the company is a meritocracy, that hard work and good results are all that matter. And yet, look at who is actually getting ahead. Is it always the most competent or honest person? Or is it the most visible person? The one who controls perception better than they control performance. The one who is best at framing failures as learning experiences. And colleagues, wins as team efforts they just happen to lead. The one who spends more time cultivating relationships with the boss than on the actual work. The brutal truth is that these institutions sell you an ideal while operating on a totally different set of principles. They praise the sheep while promoting the wolves who have learned to wear sheep's clothing. They have a vested interest in you being good because good people are manageable. They are predictable. They do not rock the boat. They do the work without demanding too much credit and absorb blame to keep the peace. They are the perfect cogs in a machine that serves someone else's ambition. This creates a painful cognitive dissonance. You have been given a blueprint for a fantasy world, and you are trying to apply it to the messy, complicated reality of human interaction. The result is a specific kind of failure, the failure of the person who is perpetually confused about why their efforts go unrecognized. The failure of the person who feels a constant, low-grade resentment, a sense of being cheated. And if you have ever wondered why your silent loyalty has not paid off, this is why. You feel this way because you are being cheated. You have been sold a faulty map, and now you are wondering why you are lost. To find your way, you need a new map. And the man who drew it, Machiavelli, will show you the rules of the world as it truly is. If you miss this next part, you will keep playing the wrong game for the rest of your life. As a high-level diplomat for the Florentine Republic, he was on the front lines of power. He saw firsthand what made states rise and fall, and what made leaders succeed or fail. His most famous work, The Prince, was a practical handbook on how to get and keep power. And it was shocking because it committed the ultimate heresy. Machiavelli separated politics from traditional morality. He dared to say what no one else would: the rules of ordinary life cannot run a kingdom or a company. He argued that a leader's actions cannot be judged by the same standards as a private citizen's. A private citizen can afford to be good in all things. A leader, whose main job is the security of the state, cannot. As Machiavelli wrote, a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. Let us be very clear. Machiavelli was not advocating for cruelty for its own sake. He was not a sadist. He was a pragmatist. He understood something you already feel deep down. The world is not kind just because you are. In a world filled with ambitious, self-interested people, a leader who is bound by a rigid moral code, who refuses to lie, deceive, or use force when necessary, is not being noble. They are being irresponsible. Their goodness will lead to the collapse of their state, bringing ruin to the very people they are supposed to protect. In other words, their virtue becomes a weapon against them. Machiavelli introduced a new way of thinking about virtue. The classical traditions saw virtue as moral goodness, honesty, charity, and so on. Machiavelli had a different term, virtù. In the Machiavellian sense, virtù has little to do with being nice. It is a set of skills, boldness, intelligence, strategic cunning, adaptability, and when needed, ruthlessness. It is the ability to see reality clearly and act decisively before it crushes you. Opposing virtue was fortuna, or fortune. Fortuna is everything outside our control: luck, chance, the chaos of events. Machiavelli famously compared fortuna to a raging river that, when it floods, destroys everything. A foolish person builds their house on the riverbank and prays, but the person of virtù anticipates the flood. During the calm seasons, they build dams and levees, not to stop the river, but to channel its destructive force and maybe even turn it to their advantage. This is strategy at its highest form. You cannot control the storm, but you can decide whether it drowns you or carries you forward. This is the core of the Machiavellian worldview. It is not a rejection of morality, but a recontextualization of it. It recognizes that effectiveness is its own kind of moral imperative. What good is a leader whose noble ideals leave their people conquered? What good is a CEO whose kindness bankrupts their company and destroys livelihoods? Intentions do not save anyone. Results do. Machiavelli's philosophy is the ultimate red pill. It is the awakening from the dream of a just world to the reality of a world governed by power. It gives you a new lens to understand why your goodness has been failing you. In the next section, we will break down the 5 Machiavellian principles that separate those who get washed away from those who rise. To move from being merely good to being effective, you have to integrate a new set of operating principles. This is not about abandoning your values, but about understanding the strategic landscape where those values have to survive. These are the core lessons from Machiavelli, translated for the modern world. This is the pivot from being well-intentioned to being effective. The greatest weakness of the good person is that they operate based on how the world should be, not how it is. They expect fairness and reciprocity from people who have no intention of giving it. Machiavelli saw this as the fast track to ruin. Reality is the ultimate judge of success and failure. Ignoring it for an ideal is strategic suicide. Believing the world will act like your ideals is how your work disappears. Think about the modern workplace. The idealist believes in a pure meritocracy. They work hard, assuming their efforts will be automatically noticed and rewarded. They share their best ideas in group meetings, believing the best idea will naturally win, and credit will be shared. Effort is invisible. Visibility is engineered. The realist understands that a workplace is a political ecosystem. They know visibility is just as important as productivity. They document their work. When they have a killer idea, they do not just toss it into a group brainstorm. They build support for it behind the scenes. having one-on-one conversations with key players, and creating allies before the idea is ever presented publicly. By the time they present it, its success is already a foregone conclusion. Outcomes are decided before the meeting starts. The realist understands that credit is not given. It is claimed strategically. They learn to speak the language of results. Instead of saying, "I worked hard," they say, "My work on Project X led to a 15% increase in efficiency." The idealist, meanwhile, watches their idea get championed by a colleague who is better at politics and feels betrayed. They complain the world is unfair. The realist knows the world is not fair or unfair, it just is. It operates on cause and effect. The cause of success was not just having a good idea, but understanding the human dynamics required to make it happen. Stop expecting fairness. Start designing leverage. To embrace realism is not to become cynical. It is to become clear-eyed. It is the difference between a child who believes in monsters and an adult who installs a security system. The adult does not live in fear, but they have taken prudent measures based on a realistic assessment of threats. The good person is waiting for the world to live up to their ideals. The effective person learns the rules of the world as it is and plays to win. Fail this shift, and the world quietly erases your contributions. This is probably the most misunderstood Machiavellian idea. When he asked if it is better for a leader to be loved or feared, his answer was brutally pragmatic. He said you should want to be both, but since that is difficult, it is much safer to be feared than loved. When stakes are real, reliability beats affection. Our modern culture recoils at this. Fear sounds like tyranny and abuse. But to get what Machiavelli meant, we have to look at the psychological reality he was describing. Love, he argued, is a bond of obligation that people, being fickle, will break whenever it benefits them. Love is unreliable. Fear, however, is sustained by a dread of consequences, a dread that is far more reliable. In a modern context, fear is not about making people terrified of you. That is just toxic. Think of fear as a profound and unwavering respect for consequences. It is the understanding that you say what you mean and mean what you say. It is the knowledge that your boundaries are firm and that if standards are not met, there will be a direct and predictable outcome. Stable standards create stable teams. Consider two managers. The loved manager wants to be everyone's friend. They avoid tough conversations and grant extensions to avoid conflict. They tolerate poor performance from one person because they do not want to hurt their feelings, forcing the high performers to pick up the slack. For a while, this manager is popular, but over time, deadlines become suggestions. Standards erode. The high performers get resentful, knowing their excellence is rewarded with more work, while their slacking colleague faces no repercussions. The team's performance collapses. The manager who wanted to be loved ends up neither loved nor respected. Popularity without standards collapses morale. Now, consider the feared manager. From day one, they establish clear, high standards and the non-negotiable consequences for failing to meet them. When a deadline is missed, an uncomfortable conversation happens immediately. This manager is not cruel. They are ruthlessly consistent. The team may not go out for drinks with this manager, but they know exactly where they stand. They respect the manager. And because problems are dealt with swiftly, they create a stable, high-performance environment. This is what Machiavelli called cruelty well used. Short-term decisive actions that prevent long-term chaos. Short, firm corrections prevent long, slow decay. This is about choosing respect over popularity. It is understanding that consistency and firm boundaries are a far more reliable foundation for success than the fickle affection of others. Cling to being loved and you will be used. Choose to be respected and you will endure. Here we reach an even more radical idea. The good person believes morality is an end in itself. You are honest because it is the right thing to be. The strategist understands that in the game of power, morality is also a tool. Machiavelli argued that it is not necessary for a leader to have all the good qualities, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. Reputation is leverage. This sounds like hypocrisy, but its strategic wisdom is profound. Your public reputation is one of your most valuable assets. A reputation for integrity and fairness makes people trust you and want to work with you. The wise person actively cultivates this. Earn trust, then use it wisely. However, the critical difference is that the strategist is never a prisoner of their public virtues. The good person thinks, I am an honest person, so I must be completely transparent in this negotiation. They lay all their cards on the table and get taken to the cleaners. Transparency has a time and a place. The strategic person also values a reputation for honesty. But in that same negotiation, they understand that a negotiation is not a confessional. It is a game with its own rules. They are willing to conceal their true bottom line, to bluff, to use silence to their advantage. They are not being immoral. They are being strategically opaque. In a competitive environment, they are willing to conceal their true bottom line, to bluff, to use silence to their advantage. They are using the appearance of virtue, calm and reasonable, while refusing to be crippled by a naive commitment to total transparency that would guarantee failure. Protect your interests without sacrificing your image. You must control the narrative about yourself, or others will control it for you. This means understanding the difference between your private self and your public persona. It is not about being fake. It is about being professional. You do not vent about your boss on social media. You do not reveal your deepest insecurities to your rivals. You project competence and calm, even when you feel otherwise. If you do not shape your image, someone else will. The good person wears their heart on their sleeve, making them incredibly predictable. Predictability is strategic death. The effective person knows some things must be held in reserve. They use virtue as a shield and a social lubricant, but never as a cage that stops them from protecting their interests. Predictable is exploitable. Machiavelli wrote that a leader must be both a lion and a fox. The lion is mighty and can scare off wolves, but it is unsubtle and easily falls into traps. The fox is cunning and can recognize traps, but it is too weak to fight wolves. You must be both. You need the lion's strength, but also the fox's cunning. Force without foresight is a trap. The tragedy of many good people is that they try to be only the lion. They believe in direct confrontation and brute force honesty, and so they repeatedly walk straight into traps. Blunt truth without strategy becomes self-sabotage. Imagine an employee who discovers a major problem at their company. Acting as the lion, they march into the CEO's office and demand action. They are strong, direct, and morally right. And what happens? They are branded a troublemaker. The problem gets buried, and 6 months later, the lion is mysteriously restructured out of a job. They were strong, but they fell into a political trap they did not see. Right is not enough. You must be safe. What would the fox do? The fox sees the problem but moves differently. It starts by gathering intelligence. Who else knows? Who benefits from this? The fox then moves with subtlety, maybe leaking information anonymously to a journalist, or building a quiet coalition of other affected employees. It starts by gathering intelligence. Who else knows? The fox frames the problem not as an accusation, but as a potential legal or financial risk to the company. By the time the problem comes to light, it is not one person's word against the institution. The fox survives, and often prospers, because it understood the terrain. Indirect paths avoid direct traps. Being a fox is about developing strategic patience and understanding that the indirect path is often the most effective. In a conflict with a colleague, the lion confronts them publicly. The fox might use calculated generosity, publicly praising a minor success of their rival to disarm them. The fox weaponizes social dynamics. Cunning multiplies strength. In our world, the lion often ends up as a trophy on a wall. To be effective, you must cultivate your inner fox. You must learn to see the traps before you step in them. The fox weaponizes social dynamics. Be only the lion, and you are mounted on the wall. Be only the fox, and you are hunted. Be both. At the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy is a skeptical but realistic view of human nature. He wrote that in general, men are ungrateful, fickle, pretenders and dissemblers, evaders of danger, eager for gain. This sounds harsh, but it is a crucial strategic assumption. The good person assumes others are well-intentioned and trustworthy. This miscalculation is the source of their greatest failures. Trust words and you will be fooled. Study patterns and you will be safe. The effective person operates on a different assumption. Everyone is primarily motivated by self-interest. Design for self-interest and you reduce betrayal to math. This does not mean you become a paranoid wreck. It means you build systems and relationships based on aligned self-interest, not blind faith. Alignment beats hope. Think of a business partnership. The idealist teams up with a friend based on passion and trust. They do not bother with a detailed partnership agreement because it feels distrustful. A year later, when there is a disagreement about money or workload, the friendship and the business both implode. Good intentions do not survive unclear terms. The realist also partners with a friend, but assumes their interests might one day diverge. They sit down with lawyers and hash out a brutally detailed agreement that anticipates every possible conflict. The realist also partners with a friend, but assumes their interests might one day diverge. They sit down with lawyers and hash out a brutally detailed agreement that anticipates every possible conflict. This principle transforms how you operate. You stop hoping for the best from people and you start planning for the reality of who they are. When someone acts in their own self-interest, you are not shocked or betrayed. You see it for what it is, human nature, and your plans have already accounted for it. This is the switch from being blindsided to being protected. Now we apply it in your career, your business, and your personal life, where the cost of naivety is real. Understanding these principles is one thing. Applying them is another. The goal is not to become a cold, calculating monster. The goal is to integrate this strategic awareness into your life, to become more effective, to protect yourself, and to create stability for you and the people you care about. Because knowing without acting is the fastest way to stay stuck. In your career is not a family, it is a competitive arena. It is time to stop being a passive passenger and start being a strategist. That begins with managing your image. Stop assuming your good work speaks for itself. It does not. Keep a running list of your accomplishments, quantified with data. In reviews and meetings, learn to present your contributions confidently. This is not bragging. It is providing data on your value. If you do not define your worth, someone else will define it for you. From there, you must learn to choose your battles. The good person feels compelled to fight every injustice. This is exhausting and makes you look like a complainer. The strategic person learns to distinguish between minor annoyances and genuine threats. They save their energy and political capital for the fights that truly matter. Not every hill is worth dying on. Some hills are meant to be walked past. And beyond that, you need to build alliances, not just friendships. Identify the key influencers in your organization and find ways to be valuable to them. Offer help, share useful information, and build a web of mutual obligation you can draw on when you need support. Because in power games, alliances decide who wins. In your business, entrepreneurship is a war, and Machiavelli insisted a leader should have no other study than war. In business, that means becoming obsessed with competition. Study your rivals, learn their strengths and weaknesses, and pay attention to how they move. The effective entrepreneur is constantly gathering intelligence to exploit the opposition's weaknesses. If you do not study them, you are already at their mercy. But knowing your rivals is not enough. You must also act with decisive swiftness. When a threat emerges, do not hope it will fade. Confront it with overwhelming force and speed. Sometimes that means a difficult layoff, sometimes a bold pivot. These are the well-used cruelties that ensure long-term survival. Hesitation is how empires die, and just as Machiavelli emphasized adapting to fortuna, you must embrace the spirit of the times. The idealist falls in love with their original idea. The realist falls in love only with success, willing to pivot when the world demands it. Adaptation is not betrayal, it is survival. In your personal life, this is where applying these ideas can feel most uncomfortable, but it is also where they can be most protective. Start with your boundaries. Your time and energy are your most precious resources. Yet the good person lets them be drained by emotional vampires and one-sided friendships. You must learn to say no without guilt. This teaches people that your resources are not to be taken for granted. Every yes you give without thought is a no to yourself. The next shift is learning to judge by actions, not words. People will tell you anything. The good person believes the words. The strategic person watches the patterns of behavior. Trust is not a gift you give freely. It is earned through consistent, reliable action. Words lie. Patterns do not. Finally, you must understand gratitude. Expecting gratitude for your sacrifices is a recipe for resentment. Give because you choose to, not because you expect something in return. At the same time, notice who reciprocates and who only takes. Direct your energy toward the reciprocators because they are your true allies. The ones who give back are the only ones worth keeping. If you found this dose of ruthless truth valuable, subscribe for more strategies they do not teach you in school. This is the knowledge for those who refuse to be outplayed. Like this video if you are ready to stop losing and start building a life of strength. And let us know in the comments, which one of these truths hit you the hardest? This is the knowledge for those who refuse to be outplayed. We have been taught that goodness is about pure intentions, regardless of the outcome. But in a world that measures results, intentions are never enough. Machiavelli teaches us a more responsible definition. True goodness is measured by effectiveness. What is the virtue of a general whose noble tactics lead his army to slaughter? What is the kindness of a parent whose inability to set boundaries raises a child unprepared for the world? Goodness without strength does not protect, it destroys. The Machiavellian path is not a descent into villainy. It is an ascent to a higher level of responsibility. It is recognizing that in the real world, consequences matter more than intentions. To be truly good is not just to be kind. It is to have the strength to protect that kindness. It is to be not just honest, but effective. The world is full of ambitious, self-interested people. You cannot change that. You can only change how you navigate it. You can keep playing by a set of rules nobody else is following, and keep feeling the sting of failure. Or you can accept the world as it is. You can learn to be the fox as well as the lion. It is the choice between being a well-intentioned victim and an effective agent of your own life. Machiavelli did not write a guide on how to be evil. He wrote a guide on how to survive and thrive in a world indifferent to goodness. He wrote a guide on how to win, and whether you apply it or not decides which side of history you stand on.